Welcome to Wednesday. My smile for the day is Father looks at his kids and says, "What type of fruit has to get married with family and friends present?" Answer: a cantaloupe. Cantaloupe. Oh boy. This story is one of my favorites. And don't need to give it any more kind of introduction than that. Here we go. When Adam was first put into the Garden of Eden, he was amazed at everything. The smell of the flowers made him dance, the sounds of the birds made him sing for joy. But of all the things that amazed Adam in the Garden of Eden, by far the most amazing thing was the sun. The sun was so far away he couldn't begin to touch it, and yet it warmed his face as if it were quite close. Imagine Adam's surprise at the end of that first day when the sun sank right down behind the edge of the garden and disappeared. He didn't notice the sinking of the sun until it had already sunk, and then everything turned dark and cold. And he was afraid, and so were the animals. They all crowded around him, and he tried to look brave, but none of them looked very brave, shivering through the first cold night. After a while, Adam fell asleep, and later he was awakened by a warm feeling on the back of his neck. He whirled around and saw the sun peeking over the other side of the garden, and Adam did not understand how the sun was able to sneak around and come up on the other side of the Garden of Eden. But he was happy that the sun was in the sky again and he was not cold. Adam tried to reassure all the animals that the sun was back to stay, but after some time they came rushing and they said, "It's sinking again." And they cried, and sure enough, the sun was sinking lower and lower in the sky on the opposite side of the garden from which it had arose. "Let's build something to stop it from sinking," they said. So the animals scurried and began piling up stuff at just where they saw the spot where the sun sank. They hoped that the sun would hit their pile of junk and stop at the edge of the garden just before it sank, and everything got cold again. The monkeys piled bananas, and the elephants piled tree trunks, and the squirrel piled nuts, and the pile of stuff rose higher and higher over the wall that surrounded the garden. But then the sun just sank right behind all that stuff, and it was dark again, and it was cold again, and the animals were frightened again, and Adam was frightened again too. Well, Adam asked God about it, and God explained to Adam that the sun would sink again and again and again, and there was nothing he or the animals could do to stop it. But God also said there was nothing to worry about, because in a few hours the sun would rise again over the other side of the garden. And God explained to Adam that separating the sinking and the rising, and the sinking and the rising, was something called time. And God explained to Adam that the time from one sun sinking to another sun sinking was one day. And the time of 4 weeks of sun sinkings was 1 month. And the time of 12 months was 1 year. And God asked Adam, "Do you understand?" And Adam said, "Well, sure I do," when actually he had no idea at all what God was trying to say. What Adam thought was this: after 1 day, I'm all right because I still have 6 others before the week is over. And after the week is over, I'm okay because I have 3 other weeks before the month is over. And then I have 11 other months before the year is over. So Adam went about his work in the Garden of Eden. Days and weeks and months went by. And Adam marked them all but didn't think too much about it. Until one day, Adam noticed that 11 months and 3 weeks and 6 days had been used up. And then it hit him. We have used up all of our time. What are we going to do now? Tonight the sun will sink and it will never rise again because that's the end of time. We're going to have to wander around in the dark and it's going to be cold all the time and I'm going to trip over things. Oh, what will I ever do? On the last day of the last week of the last month of the year, Adam said goodbye to the animals of the Garden of Eden. He called them together under the big tree in the middle of the garden and said, I don't know if I will see you tomorrow because I don't know if there's going to be a tomorrow. Before the sun sinks for the last time, I wanted you all to know that you were good friends. And if I did anything to hurt any of you, I'm sorry and hope you will forgive me. Then Adam hugged each other. Animals and Adam hugged each other. And they bunched together because they figured they would soon be cold. Some of them cried a little as they watched the sun sink for the very last time. Then after a while, to their surprise, the sun peeped up over the other side of the garden, just as it had every other morning during that first year. A new day had become, the very first day of the second year. And Adam went over to God to ask him about it, and he heard God counting. And he says, 10 years is a decade. 10 decades is a century. 10 centuries is a millennium. But by that time, Adam had fallen asleep. When Adam awoke again, it was the middle of the afternoon. He smelled the flowers, he heard the birds singing, and he thanked God again for making time way big enough. Let's be a prayer. God, help us to understand that we have time enough. We shouldn't waste it, but then again, we have time enough. Thank you for making time way big enough for us. Thank you for the story that puts in perspective how we fit into the world of time. Be with us, Lord, this day and every day, and thank you again. Amen. May God watch out between you and I until we meet again. Amen.